The United States is in the throes of an opioid epidemic.
No, it isn't.
Some are calling it a public health emergency.
Yeah, complete rubes who believe the manufactured crises the government and a complicit news media shove down our throats. I've already gone over the reasons why the opioid epidemic is a complete myth, so I'll just link to those instead of going over it yet again.
Opioids are a class of drugs that act as powerful painkillers.
In fact, they're the only true painkiller on the market. Others are indirect. Aspirin and ibuprofen reduce pain by reducing inflammation. Acetaminophen is a COX inhibitor. Gabapentin reduces neuropathic pain by inhibiting calcium channels. Only opioids work directly on receptors on the neuronal cell membranes.
Fentanyl is 50 to 100 times more powerful than morphine.
Actually, as we covered, depending on the type of fentanyl, it could be thousands of times more powerful than morphine. And this, as I've repeatedly shown, is the real cause of the problem. It is not prescription opioids. It's illicit fentanyl on the black market. People buy fentanyl thinking they're getting heroin. Because drug dealers substitute it because it's a lot easier to make fentanyl in a lab than it is to have a grow operation to make heroin. So they end up taking a dosage that might be appropriate for heroin, but since the black market doesn't have dosage control, people don't realize that they're actually getting too much. What's happening is not an opioid epidemic. It's the insane war on drugs.
According to the CDC, since 1999, almost 400,000 Americans have died from an opioid overdose.
Whenever you hear this claim, listen closely to the language. He said opioid overdoses, not prescription opioid overdoses. They'll talk about prescription opioids, but then as soon as they talk about overdoses and deaths, they'll drop the word prescription and talk about all opioid deaths, including black market fentanyl. You even saw that directly here in the quote pulled on the screen. Here's a reality check for you. When you get a prescription opioid like hydrocodone, they come in a pill that also includes acetaminophen. A typical dosage is 5-3-25. That's 5 milligrams of hydrocodone with 325 milligrams of acetaminophen. A fatal dose of hydrocodone, in other words the LD50, is 375 milligrams per kilogram. In a typical 70 kilogram adult, that would be 26¼ grams, or over 5,000 pills. The LD50 of acetaminophen is 800 milligrams per kilogram. For a 70 kilo adult, that's 56 grams, which would only be 150 pills. You'll die of acetaminophen poisoning after taking less than 1/30th of the pills you'd need to die of hydrocodone poisoning. So where's all the moaning about acetaminophen overdose? Why does that get ignored? If prescription opioids are killing all these people, surely the acetaminophen's killing a lot more. Actually, acetaminophen poisoning is responsible for about half of all acute liver failure cases in the US, so maybe they should be talking a little more about this. That brings up something else the statist rubes that America Uncovered didn't tell you. Most of these deaths from opioids probably aren't even due to the opioids, or at least not alone. They have other drugs in their system, usually alcohol, but also many other illicit drugs as well, like cocaine. Even when they've taken enough of these other drugs to be fatal on their own, it still gets put down as an opioid overdose. These people really put their thumbs on the scale.
In 1980, 2 doctors published a 1-paragraph letter to the editor in the New England Journal of Medicine. The letter said that in over 10,000 patients taking opioids in a hospital, only 4 patients with no history of addiction became addicted. The doctors concluded that despite widespread use of narcotic drugs in hospitals, the development of addiction is rare in medical patients with no history of addiction.
And so it is. We keep seeing the same figure for addiction. It's generally between 1 and 1.5%, because those are the people who have the underlying problems that drive addiction. And I don't care how many of you keep sending me threats and other nasty things because of it. I'll keep saying it because it's true. I don't care how much it hurts your little fifis. Addiction is not a disease. It is a symptom. People do not become addicted just because they swallowed a couple of pills. In fact, the addiction rate for prescription opioids is less than 1%, about half of what you'd expect it to be, because most people who take them are not driven by whatever underlying problem is pushing their addiction, but by a desire to reduce their pain levels. Almost everyone who gets prescribed opioids from a doctor never becomes addicted.
Remember, the 1990s were huge for the drug industry. Also for the Spice Girls, but at least they went away.
Seriously? You want the drug industry to go away? So you want to torture pain sufferers? You want AIDS patients to die instead of being able to manage their condition? You don't want cancer treatments or antibiotics or vaccines? Oh, let me guess. This is one of those I was only joking kind of situations. Give me a break.
The 1990s also saw a rise in reports of chronic pain. As a result, drug companies began manufacturing opioids at rates that would make El Chapo proud.
Yeah? Well, you know what? Good! But nice job comparing companies that provide a valuable product for millions of people with a criminal drug dealer. Any other bits of poisoning the well you want to do?
Folks, I'm starting to think drug companies might not be in it for the little guy.
See, this is just more anti-capitalist crap. Drug companies are providing a valuable product that people want. Remember that with every voluntary transaction, both sides gain. The pharmaceutical companies understand this. These America Uncovered morons don't.
In 2017 alone, 191 million opioid prescriptions were dispensed.
See, he's talking about prescription opioids now. When he talks about death rates, it's just opioids, without the word prescription, meaning he's including black market deaths.
The overpriced U.S. medical system.
My opioid prescription is like $3 a month, so shut your stupid mouth, you spoiled brat socialist!
Often favors quick answers to complex health-related issues.
No, that's your precious government. Have you noticed that these deaths increased after your Lord and Savior Barack Obama put opioids on Schedule 2? And since then, opioid deaths have gone up even as prescriptions have gone down. Why would that be? People who've watched the other videos on my channel on this subject know why. Busybody politicians and sociopathic anti-capitalists like you have made it more difficult for pain patients to get relief. So in desperation, they turn to the black market, where, again, they do not know what they're getting. Something else that's also been going up? Suicides among chronic pain sufferers. Hope you're happy!
There's also the gateway drug problem.
Oh my God, how many times do we have to debunk this stupid gateway theory? Again, the only reason a pain sufferer would move to hard street drugs is if your beloved politicians take their pain medicine away.
This often occurs because heroin is both cheaper and is easier to get on the street than prescriptions from a doctor's office. In studies, 80% of heroin users report having used prescription opioids first.
And then weren't allowed to get them anymore. Again, hope you're happy.
In such a sea of depressing news, it's only natural to look for the villain of a situation, someone who deserves the blame. In the 1980s and 90s, Purdue came to prominence for developing opioids such as OxyContin.
I've completely destroyed the claims about Purdue Pharma too, and this guy provides nothing new, just mindlessly repeating the same nonsense, so we can skip the entire rest of the video. Yes, over half of the video was devoted to that witch hunt. Let me ask you something. Who's gonna sue the politicians for killing millions of people by waging this insane war on drugs? They're the ones responsible for all these deaths, but nothing ever happens to them, does it? Hey, thanks for watching. Please hit like and subscribe and keep these videos coming by donating, becoming a subscriber and getting special benefits, or even for free with airtime. And check out all the great content here, like this video selected just for you.